Hey everyone, I'm here with Sean Kelly of Amperon. Tell me a little bit about what Amperon does.
So Amperon's mission is to forecast the energy transition, and our vision is to shape the future of electrons on grids globally.
Sounds really interesting. So, can you tell me a little bit about the origin story of Amperon? Like, why did you decide to start it?
Yeah, so my background is as an electricity trader, and so obviously everyone's talking about your power and just kind of the grid, and too many of us are having blackouts. So I lost power for 7 days in May and 5 days in July. And so that's what I did. I ran power plants and focused on the grid for the first 11 years of my career. I'm from Houston. That's where I sit now. I was living in New York at the time and just realized that there's just data engineers, data scientists working on all this cool stuff. Every third person felt like a co-founder. And I knew that energy's all I know. Like that's what I've been brought up on since growing up in Houston, and wanted to go and take that and combine that with the data engineers, data science, because I knew the problem was getting much harder. Why is it getting much harder? Well, first off, we talk about climate change all the time as we are coming off of, I think, one of the hottest Novembers, one of the hottest Octobers ever. We keep setting these records. And then rooftop solar is great. It changes what your house looks like. Your EVs are great. It changes what your pattern at your house looks like as well. So that was the thesis of the company, and met a very talented co-founder, CTO, and Abe Stanway, and he's actually the one who introduced me to Wellfound.
That's awesome. Was there something that changed in technology in the last few years that also enabled this to happen? Or was it kind of more of just the macro patterns around energy usage and climate change?
So I joke that I'm the tech CEO that can barely use a laptop.
Sure.
And so I would say the macro patterns are really what I focused on. But I think what has changed is we have the advantage of being cloud native. And so we have a later tech stack than a lot of our competitors who are 20, 25, 30 years old. We've been having our models retrain every single hour since November of 2018. And so as AI has gotten extremely popular and buzzy, we've been an AI company since the day our models went live back in November of 2018. We started the company in January of 2018. So definitely a lot has changed in technology. We just, again, happen to catch the entire move.
Yeah. So you guys are about 6 years old. Tell me about the early days. Tell me some of the interesting secrets, I guess, about like being an early stage founder. Because you guys have grown a lot since then, obviously, and the company must be different.
It's been a ton different. It's really been the tale of two companies. Again, as a trader, if you don't make money, you get fired. And when we started in 2018, if you didn't burn a lot of money, you didn't get investment.
Right.
And obviously that narrative has changed significantly. And so we ran the company for 4 years on $2.76 million back to essentially break even. And that wasn't cool, or people were like, we're not sure if you can scale, etc. And now we get called capital efficient, which is one of the nicest things to be called.
Right.
And so since then, we've raised 28 million and really been able to step on the gas. And so really from January of 2018 to January of 2022 was a company that was really focused on like, how do we stay alive? And then we took in our $7 million Series A in that Jan of 22. And then last, I guess, early fall, we took in our Series B of 20 million. And so that's when we've been able to kind of fully scale. And I mean, as you know, hiring is a ton of that. And so we're now at 100 employees, have a bunch of positions open, especially on the technical side of things, which is where we really rely on your platform.
Awesome. So as you scale up, what's the pitch to candidates? Why is Amperon a great place to work?
I mean, one of the things I said this at our all hands retreat, not to get there too, you get to go to Mexico every April.
Nice.
So as a sales pitch, as we sit here, you've got a few more months to get hired. We went to Puerto Vallarta, took the entire company to Puerto Vallarta last year, and we'll be in Cancun. So again, if you're hearing this and you're looking for a jobs, particularly on the tech side, make sure that last week of April is available. So just having a fully remote work who still gets to get together multiple times per year, and that really helps you create top talent. And so one of the things that I say is A's hire A's and B's hire C's. And you want to work with top talent. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And at Amperon, I'm definitely not. There's so many people who have such an amazing skill set that's in areas that are so much stronger than mine, or stronger than mine at this point or this point or this point. And that's what makes us extremely strong. This is finally cool. I've been in electricity for 20 years and it's been buzzy for about, I don't know, a year or two. And so that and then having that remote first culture, we didn't plan on remote first, but we found an extremely talented data scientist that was overseas on your platform in April of 2018.
Nice.
We met him. We're like, there's no way this guy's gonna like. Abe and I just met. Let's see. Let's just throw it out there. And he joined, and he's still a part of the team as our chief data scientist. And so we happened to start remote before remote became cool, and then everybody else went remote as well.
How have you found it? As you guys started before it was cool, right? So were there things that you did differently back then that that worked well? Because I mean, there was just not that much literature or how to work remotely back then.
Yeah, I mean, Abe's been in startup his whole life, whereas I sat on trade floors, and so I very much was like, I get to like our meteorologist, who was our second hire. Like I would just look over my shoulder at him and ask Mark what the weather was like, and so Abe had already had that remote culture, so he had a lot of best practices. I mean, we started Slack early days. A really cool hack we have is called GeekBot, and it's a really good way to not micromanage people, be like, hey, Amit, what'd you do yesterday? And you're like, I did this. And then, okay, what are you going to do today? Okay. Is anyone blocking your your progress? And you could be like, at Sean still owes me this. And it's not like calling me out. It's just being like, hey man, I'm just friendly reminder I'm blocked on this. And so we started that from the very, very early days. And then we tried some different iterations along with everybody else during COVID of one we called like the bread chat, where you'd sit there and cook together, do something as people were just trying to figure out how not to go crazy. And so, but we've really had a lot of the same hacks since the beginning. And a lot of those we passed to our large corporate clients who are, I mean, multi-billion-dollar corporations asking us how to manage a remote workforce.
How do you think about that now as you get bigger and bigger? You're 100 people, you're going to be bigger later. How are some of the things that worked well in the past changing, or are they changing? Like, are things just kind of buzzing along because you've built a good base?
Yeah, I'd say one of the shortcomings we definitely have is it's harder to young talent and bring it up. That's definitely something that I think we're getting better at, but still struggle with, because again, it's so much easier having you right next to in person, overhearing phone calls, etc., and just being able to like do that in person. But at the end of the day, we hire just be an adult, like do your job. And we've really had that as a culture of just being very efficient. Everyone really relies on other. And at the end of the day, we're helping, I mean, over 100 companies now essentially keep their lights on and understand how to trade the grid. And so everyone understands it's actually mission critical software. If we go down, our clients know immediately. This isn't like, oh, this was inconvenient. This is like, we're making decisions that cost thousands or hundreds of thousands or even $1 million. And so this is a mission critical software. And so everyone at the company fully understands and takes their job very seriously.
For that in particular, it's interesting because a lot of startups are like, oh, move fast, break things, no big deal. It seems like you can't do that. You're going to take down critical systems. Are there ways that you have set up the company to take that into account?
That's a great question. I think you can definitely press the status quo and you can do things behind the scenes that don't necessarily break things. The way that Abe looked at electricity meters, a lot of what we do, we've got, 10 million or so actual meters on the platform across the United States. And the way he went in and got that data was different than anyone else had done it before. So it took the Texas market a second to be like, whoa, no one's ever ripped this much data before. Yeah. And that's what's so fun about hiring people from these big tech companies. We joke around in energy land that a data point every 15 minutes is big data. Meanwhile, what has my iPhone picked up from this conversation? Right. More than just one data point. So I think that we definitely move fast, and having that tech DNA going to a pretty old and I'm from Houston, I can make fun, stuffy industry being utilities. It's 100-year-old infrastructure. So moving fast is not the norm. And that's really what's been able to set us apart, is moving fast and trying not to break things.
Sure. So talk to me a little bit about, one of the things with startups is always when they're small, the founder can be in anything, or the co-founders can be in everything. Obviously, now that you guys are bigger, you have to kind of give up some of your toys. You have to scale your judgment out. How has that shifted? And, how are you making sure that you also maintain that quality bar for hiring that you had before?
Whew. This is a tough one. It's one that I'm living day to day and learning day to day. At the end of the day, once you're in a leadership position, it's really more about leading than doing. I can only sign so many contracts. I can only deal with so many customer success issues. And so that's where really going in and empowering the people below you is extremely important. So I've been using an amazing woman named Maggie as executive coach for the last year. And she worked a lot with one of the largest top 5 tech companies for a long time. And so she saw some things. And one of the things she taught me, and this is a great rule of thumb for anyone, if you can lead by managing someone's surety and importance, then everything else pretty much falls into place. And so from a surety standpoint, that is like, you know what success looks like, and you know how to achieve your goal, and that takes you to the next level. So you have a very high sense of surety. And then your importance is like, I think you're smart. I think you're special. I'm glad to be working with you. And so if you can manage those across people and let them know where their North Star is, and then also make them feel valued, honestly, you don't have to do a whole lot else, because it takes thoughtfulness. But if you can manage that way, and I think we've really, again, culture starts from the top. And so by me doing everything I can to manage that way, it definitely then helps our other executives and then our managers and then just the peers all look at that from a surety and importance standpoint. So that's one of my free hacks.
Yeah. What about the culture itself? Like, one definition of culture that I like is the behaviors that you reward and the behaviors that you punish. So when you think about Amperon, what are those behaviors?
I would say, going back to our values, is do the hard things is something that, again, don't take the easy path. It may take longer, but like, do things correctly. Fill in the blanks is another thing. I've been more intentional about not doing this, but both Abe and I, in all of our reviews a couple of years ago, the word agency showed up in every single person's review, and just the ability to just like get crap done, essentially. And so those are some of the things that we've really pride ourselves on. And again, that kind of goes across. And then the other thing too is we have a lot of people who are 1 degree of separation from someone else at the company. And so one of the things that we love doing is we pay a bounty on any employee that comes in, hits their certain number of days. And everyone wants a best friend at work, right? A lot of people spend more time at work than with their families or with their partners. And so they want that best friend at work. And so being able to bring in talent, and also, that if I just brought you in, it means I'm not going anywhere, right? I'm not going to bring you in and then hit the road immediately thereafter. And so just having that really tight culture, I think, is important. And then one other thing that I do, and I've done to date, I just got caught up on this. I've met every person at the company. And so I sit down with them, and I've had a few people, especially on the engineering side, be like, we never sat down with a CEO before. And I asked them like, hey, how'd you hear about Amperon? Again, a lot of it was online. And then what made this interesting, and you get to understand that some people are motivated by work-life balance. Some people are motivated by remote. Some people like equity. Some people like, everybody likes cash to an extent. And so that's where you get to go in and kind of understand what makes someone tick. And then the last thing that I say to everyone is I now have, by having 100 employees, I, by proxy, have worked at around 500 companies. And so if you can tell me, I love hearing people come in and say, hey, this is what we did right. And always everyone loves a little scratch on the head. And then also, hey, by the way, like, you're going left here. My last company went left here as well. And for us, it wasn't a good result. Here's why it wasn't a good result. Not telling you not to go left, but I just want you to say, hey, this has happened before. Because at the end of the day, if you're selling widgets, if you're selling software, running a company is running a company. There's obviously nuances, but you can definitely learn from other founders, other CEOs, and other people who've just been there before. I focus a lot of my hiring on people who've been and pretty tenured and even pretty early at just really impressive companies, because it's a pretty reliable sample size.
I'd love to learn a little bit more about, I think one interesting thing about Amperon is that you not only have people that are data scientists, engineers, but you also have things like meteorologists, energy professionals. It's a very eclectic group of people. Has that changed the way you guys hire or the way you build your culture? Anything that you could tell me about how that works together?
So I very much like things orchestrated and want to make sure everything goes smoothly. I'm definitely an extrovert. I like having events. I like having events with our customers. And so the first few times we did an all hands, like I mentioned, we do an all hands every year, and just gotten more fun as with better capital. And I very much orchestrated. I was like, okay, this engineer sits with this product person, like this CS person sits with this seller. And then I sat back and realized that the company that we had built, it all took care of itself. And so I wound up canceling most of these dinners that were all heavily orchestrated and letting everybody just hang out, because there was no clicks at Amperon. even with different people in different cities. We've got like 15 people in Houston, 10-ish in each of like Boulder, Seattle, Tri-State, and other little pods like Southern California, Boston, and then in globally as well. And so, but there have not been any clicks. And when you get people in person, that's when you really get to figure out if like the data scientists are only going to hang out with the data scientists. And so I think that's one of the things is by putting all those people together and looking at different experiences, people grew up significantly differently. We've got a very diverse culture. I mean, across all the spectrums, we've got probably speak 20 something languages across the team. I mean, it's been a really pleasure to work with all these people. And the thing that they have in common is they're kind of the best at something. So we've hired a very talented pool and then let them kind of mesh amongst themselves. But we found people who have like a best friend at a cross department really form a strong bond. Our head of product and our front end engineer from the very early days just hit it off over COVID and became like super close. And because of that, our product front end was amazing because one was able to build what the other one knew, and because they got so close. So that cross-pollination is something that's so important to companies. And again, hard to do remotely.
Yeah.
But somehow we've achieved it.
That's awesome. So I'd love to talk about talent selection. So what are some of the things, or what's one quality that you look for in candidates, maybe in a specific department or across departments, that you think is really, really important?
So I touched on, I've spoiler alerted two of these already. One being agency, just the ability to just get things done. And then I very much do look at companies they had been at before. If it's a company, for better or worse, that I think very highly of, and they were like an early employee, then it really makes it a lot easier. And so when we look at a candidate, if we look at a candidate, we'll say, hey, we're hiring a head of product. And I really want to look at someone who's at these great tech companies or at these energy tech companies. Let's go kind of pick on those and see who we can weed out from there. And then if you can get a core into one of those different companies, then they start bringing their friends, and then you're able to go on. So there's a company called Genscape, which is now Wood Mackenzie, that was one of the early players. I started using their software back in 2006, and I started my career in 2005. And we have 10 people from there now. And because they were like, well, if you have these 8 people who are 8 of my favorite colleagues, like, let's do this. So I think those are kind of two of the things that I really look at.
So what about working at a respectable company is interesting? Is it the fact that hey, I can build a talent pipeline from there? Like, what signal are you getting from these experiences?
I guess it's a company that I have gotten to know that I think is very impressive. The way they do things, their tech stack, their talent, the caliber of person that works there. That's where it makes it a lot easier to say, like, if you work there for 3 or 4 years, you are by proxy probably good and worth interviewing. And again, it's not a 1-to-1 hit rate. Sure. Like, you don't need everyone, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb, especially for me, as I mentioned, being not technical, going in and saying like, okay, if you worked at this, like, I mean, we've got multiple people from Meta, multiple people from Amazon, multiple Microsoft, some Google, all great companies. And then like when we were looking for head of product, we were like, okay, like Palantir's built some crazy stuff. Datadog's a cool company. Like what are some other like Databricks, like different companies that you're like, wow, if like that's a pretty nice North Star. And that's honestly what's hard about the energy industry is, in my opinion, there's no company doing $1 billion in revenue. There's a handful now doing 100 million in revenue, but there's really not that kind of like North Star. You're like, oh, wow, if we can become the next Google in the energy space. And so that's what Amperon's really trying to be. We want to be able to set ourselves up as that North Star for the energy industry.
How do you guys think about so we have people, you talked about Meta, you talked about all these other companies that are kind of consumer based, right? So a lot of times the engineer, the product people, when they work at those companies, they use the products. Obviously, when they're coming to a company like yours, they're not necessarily using the products or even really getting a day-to-day experience of them. So how does your team really understand the pain points, and how do you guys build products in a way where you might be a little separated from the user base?
Customer obsession. We spend so much time with the customer. We go visit the customers. I mean, our average contract is pretty sizable. And so we're able to go in there and just, again, spend time with them, ask them what we need to build and not assume anything. We made some assumptions early, and this was why it was so nice having Abe, because again, this is all I know. I've been doing this. I technically worked like installing Enron Online in high school back in like 2000. So this is what I know, the energy industry. And then Abe was brand new to it. And so he'd be like, why do we do this? Why do we do this? oh my gosh, it's just how it's done. And
Right.
then I'm like, wait a minute, we've been doing it wrong the whole time. And so, because you'd sit there and it's just like, and so having kind of that like childlike attitude of like, why, as I have like a little son now, what's this? And so that's where it's just, I think having that person that's new and fresh to the industry, and that's what's so great about the energy transition and it finally gaining popularity, is a lot of these people want to work here. They want to come solve this problem. They see what's going on. They're very thoughtful about things. And so it's really helped our talent pool. And we also have, I mean, one of our investors ran an across of 30 companies in their portfolio, and we have the second highest retention. I guess something we're doing is working.
What's your hypothesis on that? Like, is it the mission? Is it the way the people are at the company? I mean, is it the culture of the company? Is it the fact that you actually want people to find friends and bring friends over? Maybe all of the above?
Kind of all of the above. Going back to like a lot of my job now is raise money, work with the board, understand how to empower people. That's kind of the three main things. Like make sure the investors are happy, make sure we're well capitalized, and then get the right people in there and make sure that they're able to kind of do their thing and do their thing correctly. But I think that combined with the other things that you mentioned that we've discussed in terms of just like a high, I guess, high retention, high referrals, and then just having that be an adult attitude of just wanting to get everything done and understanding they're part of something that our customers very rely on. You really can't take a full-blown off day if something goes sideways. Electricity flows 24/7, 365. So there are times that they need us because, again, our forecasts update every single hour, which is also nice having a distributed workforce. We've got people across, I think, 12 or 13 time zones.
What are things candidates can do to stand out that they might not be doing right now?
One of the old school things that I was taught early and definitely don't do well enough. I took a bunch of like executives to a dinner the other day, and one of them, who was actually my former boss for 5 years, now he's head of trading at a huge like Swiss fund, sent me a handwritten note, and I mean that will make up. I mean, that's the best thank you for dinner I could have gotten. It's better than a bottle of wine or anything else. Like, it's still sitting on my desk. And so just the fact that he took the time to do that, people don't mail anything anymore. I mostly get junk mail or bills. And so just having that, you're like, wow, this is cool. And so I think that's something that you really took the time and sat down to be thoughtful. You can even do it by email, but so few people send thank you notes. And like, it took time out of my day to meet with you at potentially getting a job. But then if I meet a candidate that I think is amazing, I'll be like, hey, thanks for this. Cause I mean, recruiting goes both ways, right? They're selling me and I'm selling them. And so if I find someone who's just like, wow, then I'll definitely shoot them a note. Not handwritten, unfortunately, so I don't take my own advice. But yeah, those are some things that just really stand out. And just being able to say something that was random, that like reasons why you got along, is pretty funny. We had an investor who came in kind of last minute to our Series B, and he and I figured out that even though we've got a decent age gap, we went to rival high schools, and like that bond made the investment process go so much easier that we both grew up in Sugar Land. So just little things like that, and then sending a note saying like, hey, we had this in common, I think means a ton.
How do you think about, I think, so right now, I feel like we're going through a big change in the way people can gather information, right? Like first it was Google and now it's ChatGPT. And I think that's changed the way that you can interview people because they have access to a lot of information that can be synthesized really quickly. So how do you guys think about your interviewing process now in the age of ChatGPT and other tools like it?
I mean, I will definitely, on things that are a little outside my bandwidth of just like not my day to day, I came clean to her. Our VP of Eng is great, but I definitely use ChatGPT for her questions. I'm like,
Sure.
what does a VP of Eng do? So definitely have used that for my own powers. But I mean, I think, again, you still have to take the time to be thoughtful about it. You also have to figure out which of the information is actually factual versus not. I mean, one of the first times I got on ChatGPT, I asked them, what does Amperon do? And it hit it pretty well. And then they were like, okay, energy forecasting. Okay, didn't go too far. And then I asked who the investors were. And I think it got 1 or 2 out of 5 correct. The other 3 were wrong. and you're like, okay, didn't quite do all your homework. But when people do that, or when people take the time to like listen to one of my podcasts, that definitely helps the interview go a lot easier, because they kind of know my personality and be like, okay, he's pretty chill. He's not like overly structured. This isn't going to be like we're interviewing for the military. So I think that getting to know that the more information is the better, because you can basically just put in sweat equity and help your chances. So I'm definitely, I mean, we're a data company, right? Like the more data, the better. So I think that people actually taking the time for their, to prep them is extremely important. And that shows how much they care. Am I one of 5 interviews today? Or like, did you really do 5 hours of prep just to talk to me?
So as you think about your time at Amperon and your career before that, what are some of the things that you've learned, maybe that are contrarian or unconventional, or that surprised you over your career of building this company?
I would say, in terms of building the company, some of the things I did not realize. So our job is selling forecasts is to be the most accurate. I did not realize that the ability to do things fast, implementation, and to stay out of people's way was one of the highest. And that goes not only for your customers, but also for your actual employees. They want to be able to do their thing and not have like a million meetings. So like when our chief of staff joined, she came in and kind of did an audit of the meetings to see how much we're doing. Because I mean, we cut our town hall from once a week to once every other week, and now it's just once a month, because I was like, goodness gracious. I was like, okay, average salary here times an hour times 100 people. Wow, that's an expensive meeting. I don't think we're going to get that much value out of it. So I think being thoughtful from that standpoint is something that I learned. Everything for me is very ROI, like what's the return on investment, whether it's buying a new software. I mean, you've really got to look at it from a capital efficiency standpoint. And like I said, capital efficiency wasn't cool when we started. And then 22, 23, 24 happened. And now capital efficiency is key. So that's something that was in our DNA from the very beginning. And then just build a strong network. The CEO gig can be a little lonely at times. And so I joke that most of the time I hang out with CEOs or people with 3-year-olds, and ideally CEOs with 3-year-olds. And so that's something that's definitely top of mind, because we're all going through the same thing in some way, shape, or form. And so being able to share on those experiences, I had a really good session with 8 other CEOs yesterday about budgeting and compensation and bonuses and things like that, which it was great to hear their opinion. That taught me some new things and reaffirmed some things that I already believed. So I think that, what do they say, that you're only as good as like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I very much think that's true, especially when it comes to like on a personal standpoint. So those are some of the hacks. And then you also get to reference check. We had 6 great candidates for head of finance, and I got my first pick, and then I handed the resumes to some of the other 5 to some of my colleagues. And so, but I've also had other CEOs shoot down someone that I was about to hire, and I've shot down someone that they were about to hire before. So just some hacks that I've learned along the way that have been extremely helpful and help us keep that very like high hit rate.
Very cool. So last question, as we head into 2025, what's next for you guys?
2025 is going to be the year of focus. So we had on January 1st of 2023, we had about 28 employees. And then January 1st of this year, we had about 60 employees. And then now we're at 100, 101. Well, in the year, probably like 105. But next year is like, let's sit down, let's focus, let's get everyone up to speed. It's really hard to be good at your job for the first 6 months, no matter who you are, and just understand what you do, who to talk to about this, just peak efficiency. So just focus and efficiency is really what we want to do for 2025, because we did a lot. We replatformed from one cloud to another due to our partnership with Microsoft. And then we also launched another continent, which is not that easy. So we took on 2 kind of B hacks, just big, hairy, audacious goals as a company. And next year is like, let's focus, let's make sure that we do what we're supposed to do. But with that, we're still hiring. We've got a number of open positions that are always on our website, and always looking for top candidates to come join the mission.
Awesome. Well, it's really awesome to hear about Amperon. Thank you so much, Sean, for your time.
Thanks for having me.